So, I am here with Andi Gladwin, a magician, international magician, may I add. You are the co-owner of Vanishing Ink Magic. You've lectured magicians from all over the world, but in particular UK and US. You've published books. You've been on various TV shows, which I'm sure we'll get into. But, if I've missed anything, do go ahead and tell me. But other than that, it's great to have you on my first ever podcast, which still has no name, by the way.
Maybe we'll find a name by the end of this.
Yeah, maybe we will. Maybe we will. But just to get into things, mate, what have you been up to lately?
I've in some ways the best job in the world because I am always doing something different. Next week I go to Portland, Oregon to do a show. Last week I was in Cheltenham doing a show. So it's great. I'm writing a book at the moment. I'm at home. I have small periods where I'm at home for like a week or two at a time, and when I'm at home I take advantage of that. Normally I'm writing or working on something. But it's a busy travel year this year. Got shows all over the place. South Africa, Tuscany, America. I'm away for at least a week every month this year doing shows. So I'm very happy. I have the best job in the world.
Perfect. So the thing that I'm interested in is, as a local lad from Newent, like, where did the fascination with magic start, and how has it evolved into this traveling the world and, becoming this globally, internationally recognised magician?
Yeah, magic was always a hobby. It was never meant to be a job. I worked in IT for, I think, 6 or 7 years. The day I left school for study leave, I got a job in IT. So during my study leave, I was supposed to be studying. Instead, I was working full-time for a web company. And I loved it, and I still love doing that kind of thing, and I, in some ways, wish I could still do that. But I got to this point where all of my friends, who are also professional magicians, many of my friends, they were just getting way better than me. Because to be good at something, especially magic, you just have to do it continuously. And I was kind of getting jealous that I was getting left behind. I was busy working these crazy hours and just not getting time to practice and perform magic. And all my friends were just from strength to strength and getting really cool opportunities. So I had to quit my job, not so much to perform magic, but to practice magic, because work just took up too much of my time. And then it just kind of scaled from there. I think I'm 12 years in now, and I don't regret it for a minute. I miss that job. And actually, my business partner, Josh, every time I say that, gets really annoyed with me. It's like, well, you were sat in an office all day, every day in London, and you say you miss that to travel the world and do what you do, but I do. Like, there's elements of that normality, the patterns, the schedule that I don't have in my life now, and the people. But I have such a great job that I shouldn't really complain.
Yeah. And how did you find that? Like you said, you just got to the point where, in order to practice magic more, you needed to kind of stop doing your IT job. So how did you get to the point where you're like, enough's enough, I need to cut the line here, maybe, take it on the chin with some losses and go from there? What was kind of like the big turning point?
So my secret is I'm a planner. If you speak to me, it looks like I'm all over the place and my mind is going 100 miles an hour or minute, whatever. But I really planned it. I knew that I would make a success of it because I ramped it up. So while I was working full-time, I was finding time to do shows, finding times to launch Vanishing Ink. So I was getting up at, 5 a.m. and working for a few hours, then staying up really late working on it. So one day I may be up early to start Vanishing Ink, which is the website that we run, and then I might be staying up late doing a show somewhere in London or whatever. So I just got to the point where I was basically running 2 full-time jobs, and I knew then there was going to be a tipping point where there was enough money and business in my new job that I could leave behind my old job. So it was a system and it was an approach, and I'm glad I did it that way. I actually talked to my boss about going part-time because that seemed like the logical thing to do, right?
Yeah.
You go part-time, then you can do both. And actually, I think he really helped me out. He was like, if you're going to do it, just do it. Just don't half-ass this. You're not going to make a success of something if you still have a safety net. So I planned my way into it.
Perfect. And you mentioned Vanishing Ink, your business. Like, what is the purpose of that, and who do you help?
So Vanishing Ink's goal is to make magic better. And we do that by making better magicians. So when we started in the industry, the magic Well, it came out of necessity, basically. We would create tricks, me and Josh, my business partner. Josh is a famous magician from New York. He performs, he's performed on Jimmy Fallon, on a James Corden show. He's just, yeah, he's way more successful than me. We've known each other since we were kids, and we always say that we have the same values, but we have complementary skill sets. So it's like the perfect business partnership. And we've known each other since we're 15 years old. Although I was 15, he was 17, which he hates to be reminded of. And so our goal has been to fix some parts of the industry that we didn't really like before Vanishing Ink existed. And the main one was that we would write a book or we'd create a trick, and we had to give it to another magic store to sell. But they didn't ever match the quality that we envisioned for our own magic. So Vanishing Ink basically exists so that we can control our own quality, have our own quality control. But now it's grown. We have a store in Disneyland. We have a store in San Francisco where we sell to non-magicians. So tourists come, and now our big thing is to get people into magic, because the more magicians that exist, the bigger our business can be. Yeah. But also, as corny as it sounds, the better the world can be. Like, we strongly believe that magic is just such a great thing to learn and perform, that actually the more people in this world that do it, the better the world will be.
Mate, that's so cool. And like, when I first met you, I remember it was just after lockdown, and you came to train with me on a rugby field when we had to train outdoors because we weren't allowed indoors because of COVID and everything else. And you know, when you came in, you didn't really strike me as this big entrepreneur or anything else. And it's funny, isn't it? It's only when we've caught up, like since that, you know, we've had various coffees and stuff after sessions, and you know, chewed the fat around business and everything else.
Well, you know, it's interesting that, so I train when I'm working on magic. I sit in this very room practicing by myself, right? But your whole mentality is we train together, and we pull each other up, and it's actually changed my view on it. So actually, now when I'm working on a new trick, the first thing I do is get my friends' input, and we work on it together. And that's, yeah, it was very different. That's why you'll see at the gym I'm kind of quiet. You know, I'm focusing on my own thing, like on my own form, doing it my own way, and you're like getting everybody involved together. So it's a totally different mindset, and not one that I think you put any magician in that room and it's alien to them, because we're so used to working by ourselves. Yeah.
And well, with the training, I mean, I remember that you said to me, I think it was when you got back from LA and you were doing the PENN and TELLER Fuldus thing, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But I remember you said that you had used things that you had learned from training with me, and was that one of them? Was it the kind of?
It's exactly that. There's a lot I've learned. Like, there's that big sign on the wall, like, of all the rules of ZooFit, and I often look at that sign and like apply it to not just the gym, but also to magic, and actually to the rest of life as well. Like, respect is not given, it's earned. Yeah. Like, that's such a mantra for life and for everything I do, and we do it without ego, and it's hard in my world to not have an ego. Magicians all over the place, performers all over the place. We have to have a bit of an ego to do what we do. Yeah. To be able to stand on a stage in front of 2,000-3,000 people, you have to have a bit of an ego. But I see those things on the wall really help me, and I take them, and I take a lot of the training that you do. Like, one thing that's interesting about magic is nobody's ever put regiment training in. We don't work out as such. Yeah. You know, so when I'm practicing a new trick, I might practice it for 10 minutes one day, and then a couple of weeks later come back and practice it for another 10 minutes. But actually, the gym mindset's kind of taught me that I might want to practice for an hour, or, you know, I know that I have time because I have to get my reps in when I'm like working on a new sleight of hand technique or something. And magicians don't really think about it that way. And now I encourage other magicians to practice in groups, like on Zoom and that kind of thing, because I think that's an interesting way of doing it. We've never done that before in our industry, but yeah, I've picked up a lot from the gym. So
mate, I love that.
You ought to think.
Oh, thank you, mate. I love that.
You know what I liked is lockdown was a pretty bad time for all businesses, right? So my business in particular, magic, kind of struggled because magicians we weren't out doing shows for 3 years in some countries. So we had to reinvent, and I took that responsibility on for the magic world. For Vanishing Ink, we did a few events to kind of lift up magician spirits. But you thrived in lockdown. Like, what was the process behind that?
Well, for me, that's actually a really good question. It was like a sink or swim moment. I remember Boris at the time, he announced like from 5 p.m. tonight, all gym and leisure facilities will be shut down. And I remember I was driving in the car at the time and thinking, right, everything is basically, including my gym, is going to be shut down and locked down from 5 p.m. tonight. So I drove to the nearest Vodafone shop and got a modem because we didn't have internet in the gym, and thought, right, well, tomorrow we're going to have to try this thing that I've heard about called Zoom and see how we got on. I remember driving, buying a modem, like a mobile, for a mobile, and on the way home, just thinking, right, we're just going to have to make this work. I remember downloading Zoom, didn't know how to use it or what it really was or how many people I could get on it. And then I think I got home, made a video and just said to everyone, I went live on our Facebook group and said, look, you know, tomorrow morning, we're going to go live on Zoom. I don't know how it's going to work or how long we're going to be doing it, but in order for us to carry on and continue, this is how it's going to work. And yeah, it was kind of like just going into it blind. But the next morning at 7 a.m, we had 52 people on Zoom, sat there waiting to train from their front rooms, garages, back gardens, whatever it was. And we just kind of hit the ground running really with that. And I can't say it was something that I did specifically or said. It was just, if we want to continue to train, this is how we're going to do it for the foreseeable. And yeah, and thankfully it paid off. I mean, you know, it was hard and it hit us all in lockdown, but you know, all in all, we managed to get through it and keep pushing forwards to where we are today.
You know, I just thought about something, how your approach is really different to Magic, but actually it's something that I've tried to take on in Magic, which is you kind of create leaders within the gym, right? So you're always telling people, you lead, bring everybody else, pull everybody else with you. And that's another thing we don't have, but especially during lockdown, I think you really excelled in that. So yeah, that is a useful thing that I think magicians could learn from as well. So
Yeah.
something I need to do more of.
Yeah. Well, how would you think you would, because obviously, like, you know, to coin what you said earlier, you know, most magicians tend to work like on their own and, you know, don't really kind of like reach out, like you said. How would you look to kind of incorporate that then in the future?
It's it can only be done leading by example, I think. Yeah, the Magic is different to a gym in that there are magicians all over the world, and you know, some of my closest friends don't live in Gloucester. In fact, most of my closest friends don't live in Gloucester, so we don't get to see each other all that much. So we have to find techniques to work around that. And actually, things like Zoom and all of those digital meeting places we've been using for long before before the lockdown occurred. So yeah, basically lead by example is the only way I think we can do it.
I love it. Yeah, and that's exactly the same in, you know, in our industry. It's kind of like that, what you said earlier, like respect is earned, never given. You know, but we stay humble and we get down and we do the work with you to earn your respect. And I think, like you said, just by getting in front and doing what you said you would is naturally only going to help people kind of, you know, follow in suit, so to speak.
So how do you stay motivated? Like, you are always there at the gym, ready to go. And for me, when I'm working on a new trick, unless I have a specific goal, such as this trick has to be ready for a TV show. I'm preparing right now to do 4 tricks on a TV show, and I just know I have to get those done. I have no choice because in 2 weeks' time, I stand in front of a camera and I let down 50 people if I screw it up. Most importantly, myself. But how do you stay motivated when there aren't like micro goals like that? The goal is just to continue for forever working out.
Yeah, I think for me, like a big part of who I am and what I do has always been around doing something physically. I've never ever been somebody that's kind of like sat down, you know, behind a computer or a desk. It's just not me. You know, within 15, 20 minutes, I've got itchy feet and I need to get up and move. And I love being around people. I'm not somebody that, you know, likes my own time. Like, I don't like being like the lone wolf, so to speak. I love being around people, inspiring people, helping people. And I honestly believe that, you know, when I'm in front of people, that's when I'm my best. Like, like similar to you, really. I feel like I'm the entertainer for the hour. So it's like my job, not only to kind of make sure you're moving effectively, efficiently and safely, but equally to like entertain you for an hour that you're coming to spend with me as well. And it's not really about, what was I going to say? It's not really about just delivering a session and letting it be. It's about having like those touch points in the sessions as well. So like making you feel like, you know, not only did you just train as part of a group and you got to feed off everybody else's energy, but you feel like, you know, you had various touch points with me and I've helped you with your technique, or we've talked about something, or I've remembered something about a trip that you're going on and made you feel like I actually give a shit about you. Which I do.
I think you do, yeah.
For everybody that's there. And, you know, I often get asked that question, like, you know, how do you remember everyone's names? And how do you know, like, that person's dog's name? And it's just what it becomes the hardwired program. Like, you know, when you find something that you truly believe this is what I was here or put here to do, then that part just becomes the easy part because it just comes naturally. I think when you try and force something, it's like, I always use the term, you know, you can't smash a square peg into a round hole. That's when it becomes difficult, you know, when people are just trying to force something and then it just comes across as not authentic, and, you know, people just will naturally go, you know, this guy's wasting his time. So
you said something to me once, which was, you just have to worry about getting here. I'll take over from there.
Yeah.
And I think you really believe that, right? That once I'm in the gym, you'll drag me through regardless.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, the model's set up so that the only part that you have to commit to is driving to the gym and walking through the door. The programming, the experience, the service whilst you're there, before and after the session, that's all like taken care of. You know, the only part that people need to do when they come and train at my place is just commit to showing up like 3 to 4 times a week, and everything else is looked after for you.
My issue is that I'm away so much that it's like restarting. How do people like me get the motivation for, I've been away for 2 weeks, sometimes longer, to say now I'm tired, I've not been home for ages, I've got an inbox full of emails to do. How do I then get the motivation to just start coming again? That's what I find genuinely difficult.
Yeah. Well, I think what you can do here is you've got to look at the bigger picture. And I think what we all become guilty of when we're not like directly working like on our business, like your magic, my gym, you know, you often get caught up in the days, the weeks, the months, and just the day-to-day kind of getting by. And I think what a lot of people lose sight of is, you know, whenever we think of our businesses, we've always got like, for example, like our 10-year vision. So like from now to 10 years, this is what I'd like to achieve. Like my mentor talks about it as like our impossible mission. Like, what is it? How do we get there? You know, if the sky was blue, etc. And we always have that in mind for our business, but we often forget about it for ourselves. So, you know, why did you even start training in the first place? You know, focus on the progress that you've made up to now. 2 weeks in the grand scheme of things of a whole year isn't that long. It's just a case of getting into the mindset, I believe, of going, right, well, this is what I set out to achieve. I'm not quite there yet. And by me deciding to just, let's just say, for example, sit at home and not do that, maybe sit and have a coffee, read a book, whatever it is, which is also valuable. But it's also to remind yourself of your personal mission around like your health and wellness. Because I think sometimes we can, especially as business entrepreneurs, can get clouded in the fact that I've got to make my business better. But if we're not doing that for ourselves as well, then, you know, it can pull us back and equally pull our business back at the same time.
That's great. That's really useful.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to do, slightly grasshop on the conversation now, is you told me that you were going out to film in LA with PENN and TELLER on the Full Dust show, which I thought was incredible. I couldn't wait to see it. I loved it when I saw it. But I don't want to kind of give it away for people that might be listening or watching in. But can you tell me a little bit more about that experience, you know, how you got to that point, and also the whole experience while you were there?
Yeah, it's a long story. I'll try and give you the highlights.
Sure.
And it starts actually back here in the UK that I think it was 2017, there was a TV show on ITV called Next Great Magician. And it was a studio magic show, which really hasn't happened since the days of Paul Daniels. So when they contacted me and said, what do you have? Come on, like, do a trick for us. I wanted something that was kind of unique and interesting. And I I was playing around with this trick, mainly at like friends' parties and informal events, where I'd climb inside a balloon and do a trick from inside this big red balloon. And it was always supposed to just be a bit of fun, like informal, dumb trick to do. And they really liked it. And so I had to go on this show and do this trick inside a balloon. And it really wasn't me, it wasn't my style, it was just weird and different. And then as soon as that happened, I got a call from Masters of Illusion, which is a TV show I'm a regular on in the US. And that gave me an opportunity to do that show. And I got a call from Fool Us to say, please come on and do this trick in the balloon because it's so different. And I'd be honest, I didn't really want to do it because it's so not me. At that point, I don't think I'd met Penn and Teller, and I wanted to impress them with something cool. So I pitched them another trick, saying, this trick will fool them, this trick won't fool them. Like, let me do the trick I could fool them with. And they were just so insistent that they wanted the balloon, and in the end I gave in. And they did a great job with it, and they featured me on every advert that was on. They used me as the advert for this whole season of the show, so it was a good opportunity and a good thing I did. But it was never going to fool Penn and Teller. That was kind of obvious to me from the start. So I always said I'm going to go back and I'm going to find a way to fool them. I'm going to do a trick to fool Penn and Teller, which I think I gave it away then, but still. So I spent a couple of years working on this idea, and again, like we're talking about, I talked to friends, I got ideas from friends, and we worked on this trick. And there was a really interesting trick in Japan that was being sold in toy stores with this little puzzle. Basically, it wasn't even really a magic trick, it was a puzzle. And I thought about it, and I just thought, how could I make this interesting and big and fun? So I developed this whole routine with this maze that Penn and Teller, that connect Penn and Teller, and the trick was really interesting. I was going to have build a maze on stage, and I was going to have Penn and Teller go from one side of the stage to the other and meet in the middle of this maze. It was a big idea. Like, I always try and think big. Like, what is the most impractical idea I can do? And that was the idea. And I'd come up with a method, and I pitched it to the show, and they were all for it. They wanted to do it, and then the pandemic hit, and it changed everything, as it did in every industry. But actually, in this case, it kind of helped me because it gave me time to rethink the trick. This trick wasn't gonna look as good on stage like I'd planned it, and I shrunk it right down then, and I spent an extra year working on this trick. And they tried to get me over during the pandemic. I got an exception from the government to leave the UK. It was all in lockdown, and I got an exception from the US to go into America so that I could film this TV show. And about a week before I was due to leave, it just didn't feel right. So I made the tough decision because I'm letting this whole team down who are waiting for me. I was like, I don't think I'm ready for this. I want to fool Penn and Teller, and I don't think I quite have it. So I just cancelled the trip and didn't go. And then the next year they talked to me again saying, come on, let's do this. And again, I had to get an exception. It was in lockdown again. I had to get an exception to leave the country. And oh, no, it wasn't in lockdown at that point. That was for a different show. But yeah, I had to go and film this show. But we were wearing masks, and we had to do all the COVID tests and stuff. And yeah, it was a process that involved a lot of friends, a lot of opinions and ideas, and a lot of the jokes on that show. So I had to improvise a lot of jokes, which was not really my strong suit. So I wrote up everything Penn and Teller could possibly say, and then I wrote jokes around it. So it was a long process and a long story to get to it, but still, it was a fun opportunity, and I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, and obviously at the end, because when you perform the trick, you eventually perform the trick. Like, what was the outcome with that?
So it was a bizarre situation, and I don't think it's ever happened before, but they told me I hadn't fooled them. And so I was like, okay, I don't know how you've worked this thing out. This took me months of working out the maths behind this and the logic behind it, but good on you, you fooled me. And I was just super impressed. Genuinely, my feeling was more that I'm impressed with Penn and Teller more than I was disappointed for myself. And I went back to my room, and I got a call from the producer who said, oh, we need to refilm something. The interview with Alison Hannigan, who's the host of the show, it didn't go right. We lost the footage. Can you come back and refilm? And in my head, I thought, no, this is a great opportunity because it's not going to air. If I say no, it's not going to air, and I don't have to have this second time not fooling Penn and Teller on TV. But then I thought, that's not really kind of what we do. That's not cool. That's going to get the producer in trouble, and they went to all this effort and expense to get me there. So I went down to refilm it. And just as Alison started the interview, she walked out the way, and then PENN started speaking to say, actually, you fooled us. We have no idea how you did this trick. We misunderstood. We thought we had it right. And now that we've checked, our method would never have worked. So I was the only one in Foolers history where they called me back and we had to reshoot, which was such a surreal thing. And it told me how kind of ethical PENN and TELLER are, because I accepted that I didn't fool them, that we could have ended it there, and they had to hold back this kind of 150-person crew from their lunch break to refilm, and it was just a great experience. So they are cool people, and I'm very glad to have done the show.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but don't you have to go out and film the actual thing in the maze now? Was that the plan? Or?
So I have to go out and do a show, or I don't have to. Like it's a tough life. I have to be flown to Vegas to perform in a 3,000-seater theater and at some point. Yeah, so that's the prize. You get to go back out to Vegas. So at some point I get to go and do their show. I'm not going to do the same trick. I'm going to do a different trick, but I don't know what that is yet. So it's on my mind almost every day of what trick can you do in the Dream Magic venue to close the best magic show in the world. So it's a cool opportunity, and at some point I'll come up with a trick fitting of it.
Mate, I love that story, and I love hearing it. That's why I wanted to share it with everyone as well. So,
well, this is where you really helped me, because I came to you post-lockdown, a tubby little fella, and said, I've got 3 months. I need to lose some weight. I need to be TV ready. And just every time I trained, you were like, 3 weeks to go, let's do this.
Yeah.
And then
I remember.
I had to go to Mexico for 2 weeks beforehand, and we were training online, and every time you were keeping me accountable, and I wouldn't have done it if it wasn't for you standing there. Training for me became kind of more important than rehearsing, which is really bad. And magicians watching would kind of hate me for saying it, but I probably spent more time working out than I did actually rehearsing the trick, because I just saw it as such a good opportunity, and I'm not going to have these opportunities all my life, so I wanted to have a TV clip that I could look at and just be really proud of. So part of that was to be, for the first time that I've done a TV show, not as a tubby little fella. So thanks to you, I put the work in, and you keeping me accountable really helped, actually.
Oh, mate, you're welcome. Anytime. So, with Vanishing Ink and travelling all over the world, what's like the next big thing that's going to happen for you this year?
A lot of travel to do kind of cool shows. I'm filming a project that I'm not allowed to talk about, all of those kind of things. But I've been given this really cool opportunity that means I'll be spending a lot of time in LA, a lot of time in front of cameras. These things may not come to anything, but I think if it does, I think it's going to really open up a few interesting doors for me. So I see a lot less magic performing and a lot more speaking at conferences and that kind of thing. So it's going to be fun.
Cool. So you also mentioned that you've published a couple of books. Tell me a little bit more about those.
Yeah, so I was a terrible student in English. I'm dyslexic. I can't write. But one of the ways that I spend my time is sharing my magic with magicians. I create my own tricks, and we have this saying in the IT world, when I was working in IT, how do you make it scale? Which means, how do you take some software and scale that from making it suitable for one person to 1 million people? Yeah. And that's kind of what I see with my magic as well. Like, how do I scale that? How do I take a trick that I came up with and make it so that 1,000 people or 100,000 people can do it? And it turned out the answer was twofold. One is performing and teaching magicians, which I can do on video or in live events. And the other way was writing books. As you can see, I have a lot of magic books. I read
a lot of books around here.
Yeah, these are all ones I've published. You can't see it on there. But it just seems like a good way of sharing. And the difference between sharing magic on video and on book is that books are forever. Basically, videos kind of fade away. So I always felt that was an important thing to do. So just before lockdown, I wrote my first kind of major book that we released, and it became Vanishing Ink's best-selling book, possibly one of the best-selling magic books of the last kind of 5-6 years. And it's just been a cool opportunity to reach a wider audience and just share my magic with other magicians.
I love it, mate. I love it. So for everybody looking in or listening in, so to speak, where can they find out more about you?
My website is illusionist.co.uk. My Instagram is, I don't know, Andi Gladwin, I guess. I'm not very good with social media. But yeah, normally when I'm doing like TV clips and stuff, I put them on my Instagram.
Yeah.
You can watch all of my TV clips on my website. And yeah, that's vanishingmagic.com is our website. And if you're not a magician, we're just about to publish a book teaching magic, like for newcomers, teaching tricks for newcomers.
Yeah.
So that's going to come out in a couple of months as well.
Mate, I love it. I love it. Well, mate, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your time this morning. Appreciate it as always. And thanks for being the first on the podcast with no name. And
Maybe that's the name.
yeah, maybe it is. And maybe, like, you know, in a few months' time, we could do another one after your various trips to catch up and see how you've got on with.
Sounds great. Thank
Top
you very
man.
much. Good luck with the podcast.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.